Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. At this time, I'll reconvene the City Council meeting for Tuesday, the 21st of October. At this time, I'd ask that you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on an item which is on the agenda, please fill out a request to speak form. It's the orange form in the back of the room, and give it to our city clerk. At this time, anybody wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. You want to come up? Okay.
Yeah, forgive me, Mr. Mayor, I didn't turn in.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. And give us your name and address for the record.
Sir. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, my name is Philip Betancourt. My address is 79730 Rancho La Quinta Drive. I'm here just to offer, on behalf of my wife, a quick public service announcement. The many volunteers with the World Affairs Council of the Desert. The World Affairs Council will hold their opening dinner meeting this Sunday. It's a delicious dinner and talk with Karen Ross, the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of California. There is a reception beforehand. It is the most interesting audience in the desert, many people say, and it's over in that other city next door there at that other hotel, the Esmeralda, but I know you would be welcome with your busy civic lives. Secondly, the World Affairs Council is sponsoring the film Not My Life on human trafficking, a most troubling social issue. It will be Thursday, November the 6th at the Rancho Mirage High School auditorium, and it's co-sponsored by the World Affairs Council and the Riverside County Sheriff's Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. It's a vitally important film. There's going to be a panel discussion, and it is for high school age students and all members of the Coachella Valley who are interested in safe neighborhoods, safe families, and support the good work done by the sheriff. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Did you leave?
I'm going to leave these with
sure.
the clerk.
Thank you, with our city clerk.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay.
We'll tell Meredith to do a good job.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the confirmation of agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions by staff?
There are none.
By council members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to have consent calendar item number 4 become business calendar.
Item number 1.
Number 1.
Okay.
Which means we now have a business item.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, excuse me, we don't need a motion.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, yes, we do on this, yeah, consent calendar. I'm sorry, I was still looking at
I
confirmation.
move the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Okay, moved in second. Please vote.
Councilmember Osborne, you're to the thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to business session. We have just the one that Terry has brought up. So, Terry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if you will, let me gather my papers and my thoughts here. And first, I'd like to ask an explanation of excuse me, thank you, of Exhibit A, which is referred to in the report as indicating the premises that the chamber would be occupying, and I can't. I'm not recognizing which part of City Hall they're not occupying.
Well, let me clarify that, because
Mr. Erke made the same comment. We had indicated that it was highlighted, and it evidently didn't come out on your piece. They are actually taking the reception area and 2 offices behind. So it's about 600 square feet of space, smaller than what they currently have at the library, and it will be closed off just for that purpose. They won't have access to the city manager's area or the production area where the clerk will be producing things. It will only be the reception and 2 offices for their staff. And with that, they will be using it then as a visitor center to answer questions and to do that. Our reception area will be moved out in front, which will be part of the whole new customer service
Back to where
area.
it used to be?
Back to where it used to be, and you can see that right now, that's under construction, it's about finished. So that there's a concierge type feel. So when you enter in to City Hall, that would be the first person you'd speak to. But that's the plan, and we've been in conversations with the Chamber for several months to identify the best place for our staff and then to have a good fit for the Chamber as well. So that's been some of the effort that we've been working on.
Then I would request that you kind of send out a map tomorrow sometime.
I will. I will make hash marks in exactly the area that they will be using, both on the contract, and then you can see exactly. It's quite small, actually, when you're looking at it. 2 offices and that reception area is all.
And then the second question that I have a couple, but go ahead, Linda. Did this come before the City Council, and did we have any opportunity to discuss making this kind of action, and did we authorize that? And I just completely walked out of the room and forgot about it?
This is first we've known,
Okay,
officially.
yeah, all right.
So through any of the chamber exchange meetings about expanding and bonding more on economic development visitor center, was that not topic of discussion in some of the exchange meetings? When we have a council representative at the chamber exchanges?
Well, that could be.
I'm not sure it
That
was a
could be.
formal
No.
agenda item. I don't believe that it was,
No.
but there was casual conversation about it. There was casual
Discussion.
conversation about it I had with Doug
Yes.
Motz before he actually became the chair. It was his turn, so. But no, as far as the council, I don't
No.
think we did that. We did talk about it, but it was never agendized as far as I know, officially.
And, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I recall during our marketing discussion, budget discussions, need to engage either commercial brokers, realtors, chamber, and more of the economic development. When we were talking about the East Valley Coalition, forming the Economic Development Commission, that all surfaced as a thought process that staff was exploring at that point in time, knowing that the lease was coming up and we might be able to use that library space for other uses. I recall that when I was asking for more marketing money somewhere along the line. But
That was my understanding as well, that council knew, perhaps indirectly, not at a formal meeting, but that we were looking and in conversations with the chamber and looking at a lot of things around economic development where that would support the staff, and the chamber would be located somewhere in the city hall, and we were trying to identify the best and most suitable use for that.
because weren't we talking about like digital kiosks and things as opposed to rows and rows of pamphlets and racks? You all were there.
Right, we talked about that as well.
Yeah, we were there. Yeah, okay.
But again, there was no direction given to enter into this kind of an agreement or bring it this close to home, if you will. And then another question is, and I know that it's been high priority for the chamber to more or less evolve into kind of more of a visitor center than a chamber, but I don't remember that we've necessarily asked them to do that.
When we had discussions about their contract, there was discussion with the council about improving the appearance of the visitor center and taking a look at how that could be made to look better, have a better appearance, more functionality, more technology. That was part of the discussion we had
Maybe
at the
that's where the
time
kiosks were going to be.
regarding the chamber and moving. I don't know that we were specific to identifying exactly the location they would move to City Hall, but there was a lot of discussion around how to make that look better, where it should go. And so that's the discussion. And you're correct. It was never brought formally to the City Council, but I think that there had been discussion about that topic.
Well, then, under item number 3, scope of lease, it says here that to be by tenant for other official business such as putting on events.
What page are you on?
I'm on page
45.
45. Oh, I guess, yeah, after consent calendar, it could be 45. I wondered how it got to page 45. What kind of other events?
Those have not been identified. And if they were to do that, as with any other event they hold, they would need to coordinate that with the city manager and through our process to put something on at any location. This portion of that agreement was in their former agreement as well, and I don't think they often used city facilities for events other than going through our normal process. The primary function that our discussions were around were using it for office space, having a place for their board meetings, using the study session room a number of times for their monthly board meetings. And should they want to have an event, they would need to coordinate that through the normal processes.
I can see the courtyard being used. I mean,
The courtyard or
great opportunity
the
to
campus or
bring
whatever
folks in.
facility they were to be using, it would have to go through the normal facility use process.
Okay, well then, my final comment is, and it shouldn't be news to anyone because I've said it for many years, that I've always felt that the Chamber of Commerce was had in a city for specific reasons, and that is to be an advocate for the business community with the city. And that I've always been challenged at how they could become an advocate against maybe some ordinance that we passed and the business community didn't like it, as long as they were accepting subsidies from the city on that. So I've always felt that way. I continue to feel that way, and I'm really seriously opposed to the Chamber of Commerce moving into City Hall.
If I can,
Yes,
Mr. Mayor.
please.
I know they have brought things like the sandwich board signage to us as a challenge and a concern for some of the small businesses there in town. So we looked at it here, and staff brought us a new program, and we okayed it.
Sure.
So I like the idea of them being an advocate for small business if there are challenges within our ordinance and that small business to help them be profitable. So just to say, look, these ordinances that you have for small business is a problem. Is there something we can do to alleviate or change it in some manner that we're happy with at the city level and the small business owner can work with as well for their business? Personally, I like the idea that they're in here to have a better connection with the chamber and with our team to work on these economic development aspects and work with small business here in town with the challenges they may have. I think there may be some disconnect, however, between the chamber and the city as far as what services we're really looking for in a specific manner. And I'd like to ask David Archer if he would come down, and I'd like to ask him a couple of questions to make sure that, you know, we're all on the same page as far as what we're asking for. In the report here, we're using, on the front, we're using the term improve business support and economic development efforts between the chamber and the city. Now that sounds good, and it seems a bit vague, but David, what is the chamber's position, if I can use a term, I guess, in regarding to improve business support and economic development efforts between the chamber and the city? What does that mean to you?
For me, that means working more closely with the city staff. Right now, we've made great strides in working together and holding meetings and talking about things, but I think being more included over at City Hall and in various meetings, and just to have that ability to walk down the hall and say something to one of the team members, or they could do the same thing with me, I think that gives strength to the whole economic development.
Do we have specific, I don't know, well, specific line items, you know, from my world, but I mean, do we have specific direction on what you're being asked to do, and then you've got the resources available to do it?
Yes, we have it outlined in our contract for services that was approved back in July. There's specific things, new business communication, so we're to reach out to all the new business retail businesses in the city of La Quinta. There's an existing business component where we reach out to half of the existing retail and restaurant businesses within La Quinta in a year. We have a semi-annual CEO forum that we're working on developing. The other item on there, we have working with the commercial brokers and then a shop local campaign, and those are all specifically towards the economic development. And we are making progress on those areas, and I believe my first report is due to council in November with names and what we're doing and how we're tracking with that.
Then I would ask Edie if when he has this report, if that can come to our subcommittee.
Certainly.
So we can look at it from the subcommittee and then report back to the council on what that looks like. I mean, you guys all have the report as well, but
Sure.
be able to ask you guys, to ask David, you or your chairman, whoever you, you know, you guys select regarding that report, and make sure what the city's asking for and what you are doing are, again, on the same page.
Yep. The only maybe point of confusion from our perspective is our interaction with that subcommittee. Initially, I thought the chamber was supposed to be involved with it, and I don't know when the meetings are and what my involvement or what the chamber's involvement is supposed to be. So maybe we can take that offline and get some thoughts around that as well.
If it's ad hoc versus permanent member or something.
Well, we've got a meeting next week, Thursday, I believe, and maybe we'll have that on the agenda to put that on there.
That will be part of next Thursday's meeting. I also sent out a memo to all council members about making Bill and staff available to go through the Silver Rock agreements. And part of that was thought of that next Thursday morning at the subcommittee meeting, since we'll have two of you here as captive audience, to take that opportunity to have that discussion with you if you have questions.
Okay. All right, and then we'll look for your report next month in November.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, David.
So getting back to the lease piece, since there is a square footage component in the current chamber location that does have promotional brochures on membership, things about the community activities, that doesn't appear to be in the reception/2 office space area. So what's the plan as far as the rest of the available space in City Hall to develop something more dynamic for walk-ins?
We've been in conversation about a kiosk rather than a whole lot of business cards and flyers, to really make that more technology-minded so that people can come in and get the information they need, and then behind the counter, if people want to have more information, they would have that literature available. But we didn't want to, and David and I have been in conversation, have those counters filled with papers and filled with small business cards, and I think David's got a few ideas of how to make that look and function better.
Okay. I want to jump back to the economic development piece of this. And to be quite frank and honest, we don't have it together with the chamber at all. They're off doing, not off, I don't mean it that way, but they're doing something else at our last meeting that I had with the chamber, where I was chairing that meeting. I found out that David is doing visiting companies and then doing surveys. It almost came out of my chair. So, and they couldn't get surveys back. So there's no set direction for them, in my opinion, to work within the city and what we're doing economic development-wise. That's just the way it is. So David's trying, but we need to have something has to be more definitive. We're doing this is your part of the job, blah, 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 blah. Secondly, what came out of that meeting was that Annie, when she goes out to sell, new memberships, she sells the gem as being the number one reason that they should join. And Jason from your office said, no, it's not the gem. It's business-to-business contacts. That's what they really want. That's what we should be doing. So we have another area that where some leadership needs to be input, I think, from us, and the ability for David to communicate back to us. For those two reasons, I'm completely and 100% satisfied with them moving here. The other portion of this, which you have talked about, Linda, is the visitor center. And right now it's just, well, first of all, the chamber has no presence. It's a little sign about this big, Chamber of Commerce. So it's a little difficult to find. So hopefully that will change with the new signage that's going in. And then I don't know what the plans are for the visitor center, but we've got no way to go but up. So there it is. But as Frank said at our next little ad hoc economic development meeting, we're going to get our act together. The chamber will, something in writing about what we're all doing and where we're going. Because right now we're working on it, but you know, David's doing one thing and we're doing another, and that's not working. That's not good. No, and it makes us look a little unorganized. And there you have it. That's all.
So hopefully, David, you can take these comments back to the board and help them understand where we're at. Thank you.
Just a comment, and I hope that we don't allow the lobby area to be cluttered as it is over at the library right now. You know, we want to put on a nice face for the community and people that come in here. And this cluttering of all these pamphlets and everything, I know it's important to get the pamphlets out, but I just don't want to see it cluttered up. To be done professionally and nice, and that people can accept what we're presenting. And you know, when I first saw this, I said, God, are we stepping back again? When the chamber left Highway 111 to go to the library, and now from the library to the City Hall, we have promoted, God, Terry, how many years? Self-sufficiency for the chamber, and we've never even come close. The city of La Quinta probably subsidizes the chamber more than any other chamber here in the Coachella Valley.
It's not subsidized.
We have a
Contractual agreement. They do certain things, sure. Okay. Understand, but it's financially, it's expensive.
It's a contract. Yeah. We can either do it or not do it.
And although we support the chamber and that, we need to have the chamber here, but I'm always looking forward and that they could become self-sufficient to be able to operate like other chambers do. I don't know what every one of these contracts are, but anyways, we wish them the best, and we hope that it comes about. And I don't disagree with having them here because there is another need that we can utilize over in the library, functionally wise for our citizens, because it does a heck of a business. And that
your library staff is really, really excited to get that room back. They have a lot of program ideas. If you should approve this today, they can hardly wait to start doing things over there. But we understand your comment too about keeping that area nice and neat. We agree. We think that should be the standard. Good. And as you see it now is how we expect that to look out there, and we've had those discussions with David.
I see a large digital display like they have in hotels where you can just touch screen and find the shops you want and this you want. And
that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, great idea.
So I would like to...
Well, I'd like to just have a closing remark if I could. And I agree with everything that Christy said. It's been that way for years, where there's kind of a this going on and very little of this that goes on. Except at contract time, when it comes time to look at that contract for services. And it may very well be that we're as much at fault for allowing that to go through and not being more precise in what is required out of that contract. However, if what was being required was more visitor type services, I would have been opposed to that, because I do not think the Chamber of Commerce is a visitor center. They are two different entities with two different goals. So I still have a problem there, and I will continue to have a problem with that. And I still think that it is inappropriate to have the Chamber of Commerce in City Hall.
With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 3-year lease agreement between the City of La Quinta and the Chamber of Commerce for office space and visitor center within the City Hall. With the authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
Okay. It's been a motion and second. Please vote. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to study session. We have one this evening. It's discussion development strategies for the La Quinta Village. Staff report, please.
Your Honor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to bring this matter forward for your consideration this afternoon. The village is certainly an area in our community that's special, unique, and we hope that the conversation today will reinforce that and maybe stimulate some additional interest. Just for a matter of background, this has been a unique gem in our community since it was established in the 30s. It certainly has seen an evolution over the years that's been hit and miss, if you will. There's been times of quite a bit of growth, and then calmer times, and then other spurts of growth. But we still have a lot of vacant properties remaining and many new opportunities that potentially lie ahead. There's about 22 acres of vacant, undeveloped property currently within the village boundary, and probably, though we didn't identify that within this report to you, there's probably at least that amount of acreage that you could argue maybe would see redevelopment in the not too distant future as well. But the city owns, of that 22 acres, we own about 41% or 9 acres of that land currently today. Our general plan does encourage multi-story mixed residential, multi-family residential, and retail and office all within that boundary. And our proposal this evening is, or this afternoon, is for you to consider completing an environmental assessment of that area that would lead to an environmental clearance for all new development within the village, as well as your consideration for some of those other activities later on as we head forward. So with regards to the activities, the first one is with regards to traffic and circulation. And in our consideration over the past several years of looking at the village and seeing potential and opportunities, and certainly also looking at a history of other activities that have occurred leading up to this point, most notably is the specific plan that was done for the village back in 1988. There's a lot of great information in that document. Even though it's not a current document for use today, we do use it on occasion for historical benefit. And it does, a lot of that information also became development standards that we use today for the village as well. One of the items we focused in on was with regards to pedestrian links within, or pathways within the village. And certainly in the conversations we've been having with Wells Marvin and his project, we've looked, and a lot of us that frequent that direction for lunch or other times see a great value for the village for an east-west linkage that would really run between the civic campus here and leading up to Francis Hack Park at the west end, and the ability to define and represent that with amenities, be it signage, maybe benches, other attractions that would draw people to that specific link in an east-west fashion. And then second would be a north-south one, essentially running from MC Suites at the north end, or that area of the village, all the way down to in the vicinity of Fritz Burns Park. That one would probably utilize both public right-of-way as well as the potential of consideration of maybe meandering between buildings that maybe haven't even been built yet today, but there are some vacant lots that certainly have the potential for an opportunity for a interesting and exciting dynamic of a pathway in a north-south fashion through the village. Another item that we focused on in conversation, or have been for some time, is Calle Tampico. Certainly it's a very important road within the village, but specifically with Calle Tampico, we're seeing increase in speeds. There's a speed survey that's coming forward that's identifying what's a posted 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, we're seeing average speeds running around 48 miles per hour. And of course, that really is a discouraging factor for folks that want to walk near or across that street. It is intimidating when you see cars at that speed. We focus specifically in conversation internally about what could be done between Avenue to Bermudas and Desert Club. Are there some improvements that could be done, some amenities, maybe things like a mid-block crossing, narrowing the existing lanes, or possibly even narrowing it down to a 2-lane versus a 4-lane road, maybe some on-street parking, be it parallel or angle parking. There's also the ability for curb extensions to be established to extend that pedestrian area further closer to traffic and narrowing that point down, which typically drivers slow down when they see that and experience it. And even the possibility of establishing some speed tables, which we've had some success in doing so in the village and other areas. So in a visual representation of that area, you can see the east-west route. And again, this was not intended to be definitive in location. It's just for general graphic representation. But the east-west pathway, somewhere in that fashion, running from the campus through the vacant properties, possibly through Old Town or maybe even La Fonda, and then running near our existing public parking lot into Francis Hack Park. And then showing in a north-south fashion, the Embassy Suites at the top here, running maybe a mid-block crossing being established across Tampico through Old Town, and again, possibly meandering through some of these properties, coming south and eventually out at either side here, connecting into Fritz Burns Park. We've identified the Bermudas to Desert Club location of Calle Tampico in this general area, as I just mentioned. We also, though I didn't speak to it too much here yet, but we also saw that this intersection here at excuse me, Montezuma and Eisenhower as being another location that at some point in the future we have to explore what improvements are going to occur there. We need it from a vehicular standpoint, but also, and we've heard about this even recently, at night, the pedestrian movement in that area. There is a lot of pedestrian activity there, and it's not well lit, and it can be intimidating even during the daytime. I've walked over there during the day, and you got a lot of cars coming from different directions and whatnot, and we need to see what we can do maybe to improve that pedestrian connection over there. So with regards to the pathways and links, I threw in a few photos for your consideration. Obviously, we want to see what we can do to really make it a stimulating environment, that people want to walk that. And you know, one example that comes to mind is if you frequent downtown Carmel, there's some really exciting little nook and cranny pathways that meander all the way through at various parts of town. And it's inviting, it's invigorating. You want to see what's down there. You hope that there's really good signage, you know, leaving some breadcrumbs to get you around, if you will. But the idea of trying to make that space a desirable pedestrian access way is paramount. And that can be done in a multitude of ways. It can be done with lighting, again, benches and other amenities, bringing storefronts out to those pedestrian links as well can really encourage people to want to utilize those. And we want to explore that opportunity going forward. With regards to Calle Tampico, a few of the photos showing a mid-block crossing. You know, an interesting concept which may or may not work with Tampico is the ability, almost similar to what we've done on Estado and La Fonda, where there's angle parking on the interior versus the exterior. The challenge there is I think the speeds on Tampico may prevent that, even if we did reduce it somewhat, but it's that's certainly an example. One example I put in is Mill Avenue. If you've been to Tempe, which is obviously a college town, there's a lot of activity. They close that street down for special events and functions, but when it's not closed down, it's an inviting, invigorating environment. Even though there's quite a bit of vehicular traffic going along, people slow down and they really pay attention, and the pedestrians, I think, feel safe. At least I felt safe as a pedestrian at the times that I frequented that downtown. And then maybe the ability actually to bring certain vegetation into parts of the street. One of the examples in the lower corner here is actually a City Hall campus with a street running through it that has a row of palm trees, and those trees are actually brought into the street. There's no curb. So you almost end up having this seamless pedestrian streetscape with cars going through it at the same time, again, people slow down. They're not wanting to venture through there at a high rate of speed because it feels foreign to them as a driver. Another item that we think is an important matter to consider going forward is the matter of parking in the village. There certainly has been a perception, we've heard of that, of there not being enough parking in certain areas, and we certainly want to explore that further, though we did have a study done back in 2006 that showed there was adequate parking. It's always good to stay relevant with that. But we want to look at our current standards that we have. Our standards, as they're set up now, do not have a specific standalone set of criteria for the village. They're the same throughout the city. So a commercial activity on Highway 111 would have the same type of parking standards we might have in the village. We think there's value in looking into that further and maybe even narrowing it down to 3 different types of parking standards, or parking types, excuse me, for the village. So we could maybe make that as simple as a residential parking requirement, a commercial office requirement, and then a restaurant requirement. So that's something we want to explore further. We also have a fee in lieu program. We've seen a couple of developments take advantage of that. We'd like to expand that and update it. One of the things we don't have right now is the ability to link a direct nexus, if you will, to definitive projects going forward in the village that are parking related. We've collected money, we've expended some of that money, we just bought some property for the potential of future parking with those funds. We feel there's value in visiting that further, looking at maybe some definitive locations for parking going forward, figuring out the cost for that, assigning that to the program, and being able to have something that I think is much more tangible and more understanding for a prospective developer that wants to take advantage of that. We also think there's value in looking at additional public parking improvements beyond our current lot. We have looked at potential of one location here towards the east end of the village. There may be other locations at the south or in the west end that we want to consider, and we think there's value in taking some time to look into that. We also identified value in taking a ain't broke, don't fix it mentality here going into it, but looking at our current land use and development standards for the village district. We currently have a very diverse and eclectic mix of land uses identified in the village. It's great. As a land use planner, I love it. To get more to a form-based type of zoning I think is the greatest thing. But I'm a bit biased as a planner. But the village is a great example of that, where it's very limited in what we don't allow. We don't see a need to change that, but we do want to. We think there's again value in revisiting that and talking with you about that in the future, as well as looking at our standards that we have, our current development standards for the village, and making sure that it is supportive of a village environment. Environmental review, as I mentioned earlier, we have in the past. As I talked with Councilmember Henderson earlier today, we talked a little bit about, there has been environmental review done in the past. We did a specific plan previously. We conducted an environmental review relevant to that specific plan. We see value right now in doing what's termed a project EIR, and the ability for us to define a build-out scenario for the village, and then going through a detailed environmental review of the impacts associated with that build-out scenario. That would address all of the key items such as traffic, hydrology, cultural resources, noise, air quality, as well as the more newer requirements such as greenhouse gas impacts. We'd fully evaluate and analyze all of that, complete the environmental review process. That would then lead to clearance of environmental related matters, or CEQA, for all future development, so long as they stay within the parameters of the build-out scenario we've used. And that we view as a incentive for future development, as it does expedite that process, and it does reduce costs for those future development projects as they come forward. So what's the cost to do those activities? We've ballpark estimated for all of the activities listed, it ranging between about $180,000 and $210,000 to conduct that. We obviously would utilize staff resources as much as possible. And the environmental part of it's probably the only one where there would be a limited amount of city staff resources used. We'd have to outsource pretty much all of that work But a lot of those other activities identified, there would be staff, internal staff utilized more often than not. With regards to a schedule, we're hoping to start sometime after the mid-year budget on this effort, if that's the directive given by council, and we would be bringing forward more definitive financial information with the mid-year budget as it comes to you. So with that, that's a very quick overview of a lot of information that's been provided. And with that, Tim and I are here to answer any questions you might have regarding this matter.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christie?
Yes. If you could just give me a quick preview or review of the history of the village and how it came to be determined that this particular area that you've outlined is included in the village. How did that happen? How did that come about?
Well, the map that was provided to you was basically representing zoning as it currently is. Mm-hmm. There are properties that we didn't include in that map that we have identified as the village in the past, most notably the Civic Center campus. We even went as far as including the Ralph Shopping Center as being within that boundary. So it is much larger, if you will, than what we represented in the exhibit in your report.
Okay, and I know that as time went on, I mean, in the past there was a village, and then the scope of it became larger. We included certain other properties. Was that just a zoning issue, or?
No, the zoning again is more in line with the exhibit provided for
Okay.
you. I believe, if I remember correctly, it may have been from the specific plan that we expanded beyond that boundary and looked at other areas. There were 5 sub areas, if I remember correctly, within that 1988 specific plan. So it expanded beyond the current village zoning. And I believe, I know it carried took the campus in, and I believe it may have taken in the Ralph Shopping Center and even a few other properties beyond the current boundary that we all, I guess, term the village.
Okay, and somehow I get the feeling, well, let's put it this way. When I talk about the village, I think of cozy, compact. This, to me, is very large. It's a very large area, and I don't know how I guess I'm at a loss to think about how we develop a feeling for an area that's this scattered, if you will. That it's so large, and I think your ideas are really good about the east, west, north, south. And maybe doing the environmental studies would be a great idea to encourage development there, but I don't know, I just get the feeling that it doesn't say village to me. It's too compact, too broad. I think it needs to be a smaller area, and I don't know how you go about doing that, but when you have these walkways and pathways, obviously there has to be something to attract people to want to walk there, and this is a huge area. So that's my concern with that, one of them. Secondly, does the district own Francis Hack Park Recreational District?
Yes, yes they do.
Does the chamber, if they ever chose to sell that, does the chamber have first right of refusal on that?
I don't know that with certainty. I've heard something to that account
Yeah.
in the past, but I couldn't say with certainty on that.
I'm just curious about that. I may have some more questions later, but that's just my feeling right now.
Lee? Yes, sir. Thank you. First, I really like where you're going with this, Les. I really do. And what you're talking about and the planning issues that you see, I really like what you're talking about. More and more we hear about walking communities. I was just talking with a client of mine yesterday that bought some property in Little Italy in San Diego, and they just love it because of all the walking that they can do within that. And we've talked about that up here for a couple of years now, at least, about doing that. I do have some challenges with some of these cost figures. I know, like for one of them, regarding the parking, we've studied parking a number of times in this area, And we've got some reports, whether they go back 10 years or just, 10 months. We've looked at this parking a number of times, and I am a bit challenged by spending, potentially $10,000 to $15,000 on parking studies on top of parking studies. And I would hope that we can take what we've done in the past and just expand on that and not go to a great cost. In regards to the environmental review, I think that's a great idea if we do that environmental review, and it gives us that opportunity for the developers to come in without them having to do it as we have on the 111. I'm a bit challenged though on that area that's north of Tampico. You've only got one piece of property. If you want to put that map on there, there's only one piece of property on there that should be developed. And I don't know who owns that or what size that is. It looks like a pretty good sized piece of property. But if we were to do the EIR for that area south of Tampico, would that save us quite a bit on that cost of the EIR? I mean, you have a cost of $150,000 to $170,000. I mean, that's a pretty big number.
It is. That's not an uncommon cost, though, for an EIR.
Okay.
But it would probably reduce it somewhat, but it's the fact that we have to do so many studies. So I don't think it would be a significant reduction, as though we would drop it 20 or 30 or more $1,000, because of the fact that we're studying a fairly large area, and we're doing a build-out analysis, is what really brings up the cost with that.
Is that zoning for that piece? Is that residential zoning?
No, that is actually we viewed it as vacant, but it's the area that the resort basically utilizes for parking, and then there's vacant property north of that parking. It's partially developed for overflow parking for the resort, and then there's additional vacant property north of that.
Okay, okay. Because I mean, if we do this EIR, and then later on, we bring a developer in, they don't have to pay for that, right? So I mean,
the way that we're proposing it, right? The way that we're proposing it, there would not be any type of recapturing of cost, if you will, associated with that.
And yeah, because some of these, I mean, we've been talking about drainage here in this area, and I'd rather spend some money on studying for drainage issues than EIR. But again, if we remove that area and it only saves us $5,000, it's not a big number. And I know the EIRs have gotten what I would consider rather ridiculous. What's your carbon footprint? Anyway, California. But I like what you're talking about. I like the idea. I like those pathways you're talking about too, to make those, like these other areas and these other cities that have those. I've been in them too, and sometimes it's just nice to walk them, and I've been into a number of them, and some of them in other countries, and it's really a nice open area. It helps the vendors, and the small shops, whatever they may be, for that customer, and it's a nice place to spend a couple hours if it's just walking around with all these. And with potentially the Wells Marvin development, if that comes about, I know one of the challenges we're going to have there is parking issues. He wants to do underground parking, and that's extremely expensive, and I don't know if there's something we can do on Tampico to help and slow that whole thing down, because you're right, 48 miles an hour is going to be 50 before we know it. Yeah. And we really should do something to slow that down. I don't know what the answer is, but it'd be nice to be able to slow that down to about 35.
Seems to me we had a lady in here just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, complaining
concerned
about that, yeah. But to keep it going on what you're talking about, and then to have, future council members chime in on how they see it, when we're looking at this first thing next year. I think that's a great idea. I would just ask that we try and save as much as possible, dollar-wise, in this, because, again, we'll need that on some other drainage issues in those studies in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Terry?
Well, it's interesting, Chrissy, that you asked the question you did about the boundaries of, and obviously the village-specific plan was much smaller. And we probably have already developed a village-specific plan. And because there's more land, and it's the opportunity to create a village that now has an old town in it, which, again, we're the only city in the state of California that has an old town in their village, or a village in their old town. However, it is what it is. And specifically, probably about 10 years ago or thereabouts, when we did bound the boundaries. What we were looking at doing at that time was creating an area that included some that had been left out. For instance, the old police substation, and the chamber was in there for a while. That actually was outside of the village-specific plan.
Yes, it
So
was.
that's when we began to look at changing these boundaries, and we went over and picked up on Eisenhower.
Yeah, the one to the west.
Yeah, we picked that up, and then we had, of course, City Hall and the library. Well, the library wasn't built yet, but City Hall was like the first big thing that you saw here, and we were taking it out of the village. It was like, come on, folks, this is what welcomes you to the village. So we stretched it, and the reason that we brought Ralph's in was if we ever had the opportunity, which we now have, to have some control over on how that might be redeveloped or rebuilt, it would be a good also entrance into the community. So that is still all part of the village. The map that we're looking at here is only related to maybe some rezoning of certain parts within the village boundaries. I don't know, a lot of this has already been built out, and actually Arnold Palmer's land at the time he was interested in doing his restaurant had not done it yet, and we wanted to get that in there, or actually he wanted it in there. I think there were certain bennies, but whatever, you know, he wanted in there, so we that was about the time that we did the reboundary. So it was an interesting process, and then the traffic, and I think this is terrific, even though we're looking at it again and again and again, the 5-year increments, if you will, the world is changing on each one of those 5-year increments, and that's why we're looking at more of a walking community. I remember walking through the village with Tom Genovese and looking at the potential places that we could have this pathway that's going through, and keeping in mind what you just said about the little shops and things, and I've been on those also. We're looking, I think, at this point at a pathway, because if you're starting to talk about little shops, you're starting to talk about right-of-ways and how the properties that are vacant over there are narrow enough now that if you start looking at trying to buy some of those so there'd be little shops down there, it might be a little prohibitive. Right. But it's critically important for us. People staying at Embassy Suites almost can't get across Tampico into the village. I mean, obviously they do sooner or later, but it's an annoyance. And we had that discussion when, did we put red blocks on that was the beginning of, you know, but it certainly was. We knew we needed more, and we didn't have the funds then, even with the RDA. It's interesting sitting here looking at those little knobs, if you will. Geez, I wonder what 2 roundabouts at either end of that would do. You know, it would slow traffic down. Might cost a fortune, but it would slow traffic down. And at Francis Park, you know, over there on Eisenhower, that might slow traffic down too. And these are expensive things, but if you're going to correct something or fix something, you ought to do it right the first time. And at this point, if we're not going to do that, I think the mid-block walkways that we have on Bermudez are terrific. And we received national recognition on those walkways, and put one right in the middle from Embassy Suites over to Old Town. I mean, we've got to do something there, even if it goes down to 1 lane of traffic, on 1 lane going each way. you know, we
Right,
just
right.
narrow it down. And that's usually called a bottleneck that you want to get rid of. But we might have to create a bottleneck in order to slow the traffic down. So that's why I say looking at something like this in 5-year increments is really worthwhile. I also was very concerned about the environmental process here and the cost of that. But again, if you're going to do it right, and just, you know, an addendum to what we currently have doesn't cover going into the future. And everybody wants to know, what are you going to do to help businesses come to La Quinta? If we have the environmental work done, that is top one as far as an assessment is concerned, and you can go out and sell that with the property. So I've kind of loosened up on that effort. I think we should go forward with that. The parking, and I do understand that the parking in lieu fee is back being used again, and we're just going to have to continue with that. It's just these walkways that we're talking about, I think it's imperative that we get those in, and then we put recognition on it. I think I've set it up here before, and I'm going to repeat it, but it all has to go with the health and wellness, if you will. But if you stop and think about how many people walk from City Hall to the village to have lunch, then you can recognize how small of an area that we're really talking about, and it's not as big as it might presume to be. But if you put the steps on there, it's 50 steps. People that are new to town, they park over here and they think they're 5 miles from the museum when they're actually, and they don't know it, they don't recognize it, but they're actually only a mile from the museum. So we need to make this area via signage as small as it is. Not as large as it is, but as small as it is. And we can do that in signage. And we should be able to start doing that, I believe, right now. I mean, it would make a lot of sense. People say, well, where's the museum? Where's the fitness center? Where's the this? Where's the that? And the minute you say, well, it's just down the street here, well, they go walk and get in their car and move their car down the street, and they park in front of a restaurant, which means somebody that wants to go to the restaurant has lost a parking spot. So I think that you can do a certain amount of controlling of getting people to move about in a way that is convenient for them. You know, and this map can be produced, and you can bring it up on your iPhone and stand there and look at it and say, yeah, well, there will be as soon as we do this. So it's all possible, and I certainly applaud the effort, and I'm glad to see it back. And I think there are some wonderful ideas out there, and we should leave them all on the table and not look at, I think it says in here somewhere that perhaps we should eliminate what we know we don't want. Well, I don't know what I don't want, because I haven't had somebody bring something to me that I don't want. So I'd rather leave that open. There's certainly, we have a very intelligent staff that has an idea of what we want. But before we start putting down things that we don't want, we really might find out later on that we wanted that. So I don't know necessarily that we should spend very much time on that. I do think that this is it was a dream 50 years ago, and it's still a dream. It's becoming more of a reality. It is starting to spread out, but we can do that connectivity. We can do that. And so I applaud you on your efforts over there, Mr. Les and Tim and Mr. Johnson and Mr. goodness sakes, Spivak. So go for it, guys.
Okay, Linda.
So I'll never question the expertise that the two of you possess on your areas of focus, and I like the layout. I don't get the village. I don't get it. I don't get what the brand of the village is, and maybe because I haven't lived here long enough. If it's just, right now for me, it's just geography. I don't know if we surveyed 37,000 residents if they'd be able to define what this looks like. And a lot hasn't happened here, even though we've seen some growth. And I'm going to question the costs as well, because I guess the question would be less, if you had the choice to just wipe the slate clean and start over, what would that look like? Just, not with the rules we have, the zoning we have, if it was just like, here, this is this chunk of geography and it's called the village, do something with it. Could we not create that on our own without, we've done parking studies most recently because of either the animal hospital or Old Town or Civic Center. That stuff's done. There's not like we can bring 100,000 more people into this geographic area, even if we build out these vacant lands with stores, except for a parking structure someplace that we can hide with trees and just say this is the parking structure and then have meandering everything else around it. I don't know why additional studies are necessary to just say we're gonna create this within this geography. But this is part of the previous discussion we had when we were talking about the chamber. It's part of the overall economic development plan that we need beyond the village of geography. I've been listening to Robert Rana and what his ideas are, and I'll say that I'm going to use some of his words. The connectivity and the flow, not only between this area, but how does it relate to the resort? How does it then relate to what we're going to do at Silver Rock? How does it relate to what happens up on 111? And not just go, okay, we've got this chunk of boundary to do something with. How do we go beyond that? And that's the wipe the slate clean, and what does that look like if we didn't have our current rules? Because it's almost burn the rule book and say, let's start over and create without the $100,000 to $200,000 on studies. And if it's because of our existing rules that say we have to do those studies, then that's part of the reason why we change our rules.
No, we don't have that. That's CEQA.
CEQA, and we have a lot of that in place that we can do what we need to do to create the kind of environment that's not just the village and the brand, right? I mean,
we don't have the environmental in place. That's part of what spawned this discussion with staff to begin with, is that if you look at all these vacant properties in here, they are all required to do a variety of studies to satisfy the CEQA requirements, because there has never been a comprehensive environmental study to address the needs that are pursuant to CEQA for this area.
which is probably why we have 22 acres remaining vacant to a certain degree.
True. It's that, it's been land speculation over the years. Some of these properties were going for $60 to $70 a square foot, and economically they don't pencil once you start adding parking and put in setbacks and things of that nature. So part of the strategy on here is, okay, in 1992, the city was pursuing development of Highway 111, and when we went to ICSC, the developers said, what's ready to go? What's building permit ready? We said, well, we had to do a specific plan, environmental. They said, you come back and talk to us when that's done. So here we are today, and in talking to various property owners in the area, as well as the fact that the city owns roughly 41% of the land area within this area, as we're seeing with the Wells Marvin project, well, we have to do a hydrology study. We have to do traffic studies. We have to do noise studies. And that's for that specific one, and then it'll be for every other one of these. So the question is, do you do a comprehensive study to get it done?
Then how do we blanket it beyond this and have it have extensions towards other areas that we need to focus on? Or is that even possible? That's got to be done in phases.
Well, first
or do we plan it with
we
that
have to create a there.
Yeah, I don't feel that they're there right now.
So if you're going to come to the village and connect it to the resort, yeah, you could do signage and you could create pathways and that, but you have to create more critical mass so people will want to come there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And the same with Highway 111. If you want to get people off of Highway 111, we got to create more of a critical mass for people to have interest to come there. And the same with Silver Rock, if that development sees the light of day.
You know, Linda, when they did that ER on the 111 piece, development were really smooth. I mean, 5-10 years ago when we were developing 111 and the big groups were coming in, when we had that already in place, it went real easy and real well for them. So that aspect of doing it here and then making it that much easier, you know, it makes sense because we saw it earlier.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah, it worked out well.
I agree with a blanket, an open, I don't want to say open checkbook, but it's an open pass to let things happen. So, but every little piece of this just seems like it goes beyond that. And I feel like some of that we should just utilize. And if it's really about the environmental piece for the ease of permitting for new developers.
I think that it is, and the rest of it doesn't need to be
Doesn't
done.
need to
He
be
knows
done.
we don't need another parking study.
Or traffic
It's
plan.
traffic.
We
Well-
traffic and park ourselves.
Well, your comment on the last parking study was 2006?
Yes, and that was a parking study, meaning that it was an analysis of
Right.
existing parking
What
and...
available land there was.
Correct. And what we're proposing is not another parking study. What we're proposing is, a lot of it is focused on the in lieu program. As I explained, we have a general estimate of cost that we provide people, but it's not definitive and tangible to something that's on a list that we're going to go out and build. So we're basing it on real estate value of land that we've purchased, and we're basing it on a preliminary estimate of cost per stall to construct future surface level parking. But our interest is to take that into a point of saying we're going to be more definitive, saying there's going to be a parking lot in these locations above and beyond the one that we have, and then actually adding definitive hard costs to that to improve those in the future. That way, when somebody comes in to pay or takes that option to pay in lieu, we can definitively say it's going to these items. And right now, that's not the case. Right now, we're putting that money into it's a specific fund for future use towards improvements, parking improvements in the village, but again, it's not definitive towards an actual parking lot that's going to be built in the future. Okay. So the thought is to try and define that more. It would give us that chance also to, as we go through all of these steps, to look at, is a structured parking, not tomorrow, but is structured parking something that's something we should be planning for the next 5 or 10 years out as the village builds? If that's the case, we need to start putting a price to that and being real about how we collect the money to make that happen.
That makes sense. Okay.
I still want Les to answer that blank slate.
Well,
But probably.
okay, go back to council.
No, he's
So
probably
given your
what's here.
blue and your green walks, where would your parking structure go? You know we're going to need one.
I think right now, if everything builds out around the park, I believe that our existing parking lot is probably the best location for a structured parking. Look, I mean, it's centrally located.
First thing
It will
on the
likely,
blank
that's kind of the pulse or the heart of the village, in my opinion. I think that, not just because of the activity today, I think in the future that will still be the center of the village.
Good idea.
And
So I support the blank slate theory.
And I recently, sometime in the last 2 or 3 years, had the opportunity to drive by a parking structure that was probably 5 stories tall, and at the top of it was a restaurant. And what more lovely of a sight to see from the top of the restaurant in the village and the surrounding view. And how many people are going to bid for that site?
Yeah. Cool.
So it doesn't have to be ugly.
No, there are plenty of very attractive.
They're very,
parking
yeah.
structures. Some of them that I've seen, I wish I'd taken pictures of, but you wouldn't even know it was a parking structure unless you actually.
Yeah.
Because right now, some of these
Even
lovely,
build planters into them.
right, some of these lovely pictures and ideas of, it's great, but it's almost like it would be impossible to do here in La Quinta without a lot of money and a lot of studies and a lot of work until we do this step of doing an overall one of these, kind of saying, let's get the free build plan.
Does that restaurant involve, by the way?
You know, anything can happen if you got enough money.
Look at the Space Needle.
If I could
Yeah.
just add something
Are you
on
done?
the traffic studies, I mean, the reason why I think that that's critical is that we're going to create, if we're truly going to create a pedestrian environment in our village, and we want people to feel comfortable walking around, well, that has impacts on the streets that they used to walk on, and we need to make sure that we're addressing the fact that, you know, the rest of the year, when we're not having festivals or doing whatever we're going to do in the village area, people need to be able to get around efficiently. When we do the individual studies, like on the Villas at Old Town project, it points out, you know, inefficiencies, if you will, in our traffic system. 52 in Bermudas is prime example of a misaligned intersection that needs to be addressed at some point. If we don't take care of those things, I think what's going to happen is you're going to frustrate people that used to drive Tampico and now want to use 52 or something along those lines, and they're not going to be able to get around because we won't have had the foresight to take care of some of these things ahead of time.
So you've already, you just saved us a bunch of money by making that statement about 52. We don't need a study for that now. We're never going to be a downtown LA. We do not have a bumper-to-bumper traffic issue. Even, it's minimal even when we have events down here. And it's for a specific reason, and it's a draw, and people do that and tolerate that because of the destination that they're seeking, that they're there. So, again, I don't know. I just don't ever see flow and traffic being a huge issue in this area if we create the walkable components, given our population and what our population projections look like.
And you know,
to the extent of that much money, I guess that's
well, and I can agree that we who live here can put up, you know, that we will not have that. But when you have special events in town, it's the people that are coming in that get frustrated. And
I think it's our own residents that get more frustrated than visitors.
We see this during the Arts Foundation. Traffic is a major concern.
That's 4 days.
My turn. You know, we're going back to many years ago and that becoming more pedestrian friendly in that. I know my conversation with Wells when we were dealing with Old Town and that and making Main Street pedestrian friendly. But parking was a major concern of how we were going to be able to get the parking and that. So instead of being pedestrian friendly, and now it's automobile friendly and that. And it's too bad because I think that Main Street, if you put trees in the middle and you had walking paths and benches and that, people would really love to get out of their car and walk down the street. But it's aesthetics in that. Terry and I, we can dig back, 15 to 20 years ago, we had a local architect, Stu Woodard, put together a master plan for pedestrian use in the, quote, village area. And it was a wonderful plan in that he didn't charge us anything. He did it on his own, and he's presented it to the council at that time, and that was before a lot of things were built here, Old Town and that, and that would have been the time to really put it together, and that we could have had a master plan and saying this is the way we're going to develop around friendly pedestrian traffic, and that. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but I know I appreciated what Stu did, but it would have been something that we could have looked back on and said, hey, this is great. Unfortunately, things have changed and it's a little late. But I think we do need to move forward to do what we can to get people out of the cars and have them be able to get from one place to another by walking and that. We need the parking, but we also need, I think, a user pedestrian-friendly path, if that's what you want to call it, that ties all of the functions here within the city and the village area together. And that I think it's important that we tie it together in that. Thank you. I think it's a good start. We can start moving forward on some of the things that you're bringing to us and that. And the issue with the EIR. You know, to me, I think if we could do this up front, it would sure save time and effort on developers that come in, and it wouldn't delay the process of getting permits to be able to develop in the village. So long as it isn't, you know, too costly, overly costly in that. But this cost could be given back to the developer at such time he came in, but he wouldn't have to go through the process of an EIR and that. So I think it's something that we should look at strongly, and if we can financially, do it without spending a whole lot of money and be able to budget it. It would be something that I think would be thinking ahead as to what we could do to help development when it comes. And that. But all in all, thank you for doing this. I think it's a start, and that to move forward in a critical area of our city, and that's the village, Old Town Village area. two into one, huh?
Yeah.
And that. But again, thanks to staff and that for putting this together, and it's good talking points. Okay. With that, unless there's anything else?
So are we saying keep moving forward and reduce
Sure.
the cost, but still do the ER?
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, let's don't stop.
We'll continue to look at that, and then as we mentioned, we'll be prepared at mid-year to come forward with, we've heard you loud and clear, and we'll take that information, sharpen the pencil, if you will, and then be back at mid-year just prior to that to report back regarding these items and costs.
Good.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Les. Jim?
If it was a clean slate idea plan of yours, I'm going to tap into that.
Okay, all right. We'll move on to reports and informational items. Linda?
I'm cleared. I've got meetings coming up,
Okay.
so I have no report.
Okay, Christie?
Yes, CVAP, I know that you continue to get an email on a regular basis from them, but the last meeting was in Cathedral City, and Mayor Kathy DeRosa gave the welcoming statement, which was really basically her swan song. It was. It went on and on and on, but it was nice that she's not going to be on council anymore. Evidently, CVAP has a new website that will be launching very shortly, within the next few days. The blueprint that we've been talking about, I guess Michael Shepard is doing that? Yes. He will have that all ready for presentation in March of 2015. There was some discussion by Joe Wallace with respect to the iHub in the East Valley.
Right.
What's happening? What's the update?
Well,
Well,
and
he's-
it just
well, I'm sorry.
is, no, that's okay. You can jump in there anytime you want to, but they did this, and they have a business plan, and blah, 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 and I
Well,
haven't seen the business plan yet.
No, and he's talking, well, and Palm Springs, committed to $1 million to this iHub. So we'll see what the East Valley can do. And he kind of challenged us to, yeah.
So we gave them $40,000
Yeah.
to make sure the
Yeah.
application and the matching
Right.
happened to do
And-
the iHub. And so
Right,
do-
and they're gonna have the
obviously-
I'm sorry, I don't
No,
know.
go right ahead.
They're gonna
Go
have the
ahead.
GIF study.
Study.
It was supposed to come out in September,
Right.
but they ran into some problems, so now it's supposed to come out before the end of December. End of the year, they'll have that. And then that will go only to those who invested.
And Palm Springs did pass a 1%
Yes,
increase in their sales tax.
yes.
And it had certain restrictions on how that money was going to be spent. And there's a committee of people that kind of control that, and that's
Right.
where their money's coming from.
Exactly right. That Measure J did
Yeah.
quite a bit in
That
Palm
plus the
Springs.
tax on their marijuana.
Yeah, the new ones, yeah.
Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. I have
Yeah,
no
so
idea
the
how
GIS
much.
study, there's no way can be any ask, so we determine what that reveals.
Okay. Thank you so much for all your. This is great. This is how our council functions so well. This is wonderful. No, it is. It's great. And Lee was at the meeting too. We're at the CVAP meeting. So we've been talking about an East Valley Coalition. We still don't have a business plan for that. That isn't together, but CVAP jumped in and took the old enterprise zone office
Right,
and staffed it with one of their people,
Zeke,
Zeke. And I'm trying to set up a meeting with Zeke because I'm not exactly, I mean, he's there physically and they're paying the rent on the building, but I'm not sure what they're doing. I haven't made that determination yet or how that works out. But when Joe Wallace gave his report on business development, was talking about the East Valley and I said, so define East Valley. What is East Valley?
right.
And he said, well, for the purposes of this report, it's everyone who put their money into their $40,000 to, have this GIS study.
What if they were in Palm Springs? Is that the East Valley?
No, they didn't put any money in, but yes, it would have been.
Would we do move west?
So we had, for purposes of that report, East Valley is Palm Desert, and Jan kind of looked a little bit, oh, I'm in the East Valley now, am I? And we skip Indian Wells, and then La Quinta and Indio. Coachella said they were going to be part of this whole deal, but they never coughed up the cash.
County allegedly covered.
Yeah, well, no, the county was
CVEP.
already in, CVEP covered. They
Covered
took
Coachella's portion.
our money to cover Coachella too. So, anyway, they're moving forward. They've got some great ideas. Their workforce excellence plan is so good. The workforce excellence plan is so good. It's just, it's great. But I'm really interested in seeing this blueprint and how that moves forward, because the workforce excellence plan was part of keeping business here, but drawing business in and new businesses. I mean, there is the iHub in Palm Springs and the Accelerator campus, but if I'm going to have an East Valley iHub, I want a business plan in place before I put an employee there to do some work when I don't know what's happening, because they just still don't have a plan. No. Okay. All right, so
Christy, my understanding of the location in India with Zeke is he's doing a lot of small business development, developing Latino entrepreneur businesses,
SBA.
Right,
SBA.
right.
It's not iHub related in that regard until we look at what this GIS study says, where the location will be, but because they closed their office on Carry On, they had the opportunity to get the
but they're
enterprise
asking
in.
us to finance Zeke's salary.
Zeke salary?
They will
Yeah,
be within
yeah,
the new
yeah,
East Valley. They
yeah,
will be at some
yeah.
point.
They
Once
would.
we work out the
We've already
business
been
plan,
challenged with
they
a
will be.
contribution. So again, cart before the horse, just my opinion, but anyway. All right, so much for that. Now, moving on to Jacqueline Cochran. The air show is this Saturday, and I have tickies. There's a VIP function on Friday night, and it will be at the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. In the hangar behind that, CHP, excuse me, has a hangar back there that they don't have the money for the 2 helicopters supposed to go in there, so there's nothing there, and that's where they're going to have the VIP function.
Well, the horse before the cart or something like that.
Kinda. Now, this is just, I get chills when I think about this. There is going to be an aviation academy started, and it is going to be located in this hangar where we're going to have this little VIP function on Friday night, and they're going to start with 12 students, and this is to teach the students how to repair airplane engines and blah, 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 which all goes back to my technology, tech. So I was just thrilled with that. And the startup funds for this, excuse me, are $500,000, and it's coming from the Palm Springs Air Museum. Oh. Yep, isn't that great? So the first year they hope to have 12 students, and then the next year 24, and to move forward. Yes, it is. It's great. It's great. Also, we are looking to do a land trade with coal farms at the end of our 8,000-foot runway, so that it can be 10. And of course, that all goes through the FAA, and that's kind of a long process. But at any rate, when we have the 10, I'm told then we could have Air Force One if we so chose.
That's right. 2,000 more feet.
So.
I'd rather have Arnold Palmer in town.
Okay. Okay.
So that's just really good news. There's a lot going on right around the airport right now, and they're really making some good use of the lands that they own that you can't do anything with, i.e. There's a development going in, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure where that is, but they need dirt. So they're taking it from, they're going to they're selling their dirt, in other words, to this development. And
At least it won't go in the Salton Sea.
That's right, and then, exactly. And so they're going to make retention basins out of this area where the dirt's coming out, so thinking, I like it. So if anybody wants to go, the air show's on Saturday, starts at 9. And I've got VIP parking passes and an invitation if you want to go on Friday night. And there's a, excuse me, VIP chalet at the air show if you want to do that.
I received mine, so I don't know.
Okay,
So I'll be there Friday night, and I'll be there.
great. Perfect, okay. That's it.
Okay.
I don't have any, I don't know why, none of my committees are meeting, you know?
Okay.
Maybe they wanted to get rid of me a month early, I don't know.
No.
Okay, Lee?
I don't have any items.
I don't either.
Oh, well, there you go.
We have Sunline tomorrow morning, but other than that, that's it. Okay, we'll move on to department reports. City manager?
We'd like to give you 2 updates. I'd like to talk about the compensation agreements, and then Chris would like to talk about our flood relief effort status.
Good.
In terms of the compensation agreements, as we talk to you, we have these agreements that we need pursuant to our direction from the Department of Finance to enter into with taxing agencies to compensate them the $15 we owe them for the land transfer at Silver Rock. There were 9 taxing agencies that we worked with. To date, we have 6 completed agreements on file in terms of they've been executed and approved by their board of directors, and we have 3 remaining that will occur in November. That's 2 dealing with the County of Riverside agencies and 1 dealing with the Riverside County Office of Education, of which we concluded modifications last week, and those went out. So we're on target to get these things done by year end as we promised.
Good.
Hopefully November, so we don't wait till December.
Correct. Well, the meetings that are scheduled are all in November, and if they're approved by those bodies, which we have every indication that'll occur, then it's just a matter of them signing, and I will sign, and we're done. So that chapter will be closed.
Good, good.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, there is indications that Linda G. is back, and she's back in full force, indicating that the city of La Quinta is hiding a significant RDA deficit or debt. We owe a lot of money from the RDA. Well, to whoever, it doesn't matter. We don't have it. We don't have it anyway. The county now has it. Anyway, she's back, and that's going to be her story, whether we like it or not.
We've got candidates saying the same thing.
Well, I wish you all luck.
That's good to know.
Chris?
Yes, and briefly, this Thursday, joining County OES with State OES, we have a representative from SBA who will be touring the city. Where we're at is we are working with them to line up the various properties that were impacted. So they have the person in the field. They're going to take a look at it, show them pictures to see that the damage was actually real. This will be taking place Thursday. And then we haven't got official declaration yet. So we're hoping that we get everything we need for them by Thursday for that to turn around.
Who did we already gave a tour?
So this is the last tour that was conducted was County OES and the State Department of OES.
And this next one?
This one includes similar representatives, but now with the inclusion of SBA. They break it up in 2 tiers, which is the damage to the city, and so all city public infrastructure assets. The second tier, which this one is the focus of, is the damage to private property owners. So this one is only focused on that piece.
So when we thought it was going to be 2 weeks from the first tour, it's not. It's probably going to be another 2 weeks from the next tour.
2 weeks at best. Right now is, we are working through both state and federal programs and guidelines.
It's going to be 2 months after the damage is done.
We are moving through their bureaucracies. Because of that, we've turned our attention to the Y-Green program. So we had a workshop yesterday on the program. About 12, 13 participants were there. What we're doing is, on the list of people who actually have damage from the storm, there's about 300 on that list. So we're going to schedule another workshop specifically for those folks. So we're in a waiting period from the state and from the federal government. But in the meantime, we're pushing that program as best we can.
So the state will take almost 2 months to even get here, much less their decision.
Correct.
Good.
That's disgusting. That's disgusting by the state of California.
Well,
Thank you.
by the federal government also.
And if I may add, there was a piece on the news this morning that up in Napa, they had the earthquake, back a couple of months ago?
Right.
They're still waiting on the state. Still.
Yeah.
And the feds.
So my question is, have either of the two forces that we're trying to work with, the Y-Green and the SBA, have either of them indicated that they will retroactively participate? Because if somebody lost their carpet 2 months ago, they probably have new carpet put in by now.
Right.
So, I mean, are they just going to come out here and drive around and everybody's already fixed up and then they go again? And please do not offer them golf or coffee or anything.
We have, so Y-Green, you're able to get from a year back from when you get your financing approved, you can reimburse yourself for any.
Wow, because I talked to a gal and her husband the other day who had significant damage. At least it caused them to have to put a new roof on from last year's rain. And they had the new roof finished by August. And so, of course, they didn't get damage this time because the roof was fixed, but they did get other damage from another source, another direction. So potentially their roof could be included.
Yeah, and if we could get that information, Y-Green has been very receptive to working with us. They've discounted their fees. They've cut them in half for those who are impacted by the storm. And from the folks who finance through the program, they're going to be bringing that money and pulling it in.
They're just going to have to prove that they did an upgrade on
and
insulation.
That it was permitted if permits were required.
Well, if it was a roof, I'm sure it was permitted.
Right, but they need the documentation. Just
it's a window I want, you know.
So Chris, I ran into Krista yesterday after the event here, or the Y-Green event. It was a museum, I guess it was?
Yeah.
Yes.
She said that she obtained 11 applications last night as a result of the attendance, and they want to do another one.
Yeah, that's great. That's terrific.
She was just thrilled that she was
I
able
heard
to
it
bring
went
them to
off
La
well.
Quinta.
It's terrific.
Doesn't seem like a large number, but.
Something positive.
Yeah.
The last one they had, there was a total of 5 people there, so
We're
by the
moving.
numbers, it was
Over double.
the best one
It
yet
was
for
better.
them.
Good.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, city attorney?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. City clerk? Okay. City departments, Tim?
Sure. Update on the public facilities and our cleanup efforts after the storm. We've spent close to 300 of the 350,000 that we had for basically cleaning up the streets and also fixing the sinkholes that we had in 3 different locations. Right now, the outstanding item there is that we have in the northbound direction on Eisenhower, it's basically around the curve between Fernando and Coachella. That outside lane, it got a lot of water sitting on it. We had at least a small sinkhole that came out from that. We're watching it very closely because the entire trench line there also happens to be a large sewer line that's buried about 18 feet deep right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so expensive fix to repair that, and I'm having Granite work with a couple subcontractors to give me some recommendations there, so more on that to follow. The other project that I'm going to kick off tomorrow under an emergency basis is the repair of the north side of the Highway 111 bridge just west of the Cliff House. if you go out there, you'll see some cones and some caution tape. And what happened there was that the runoff came off the street and the landscaping and came around and basically undermined the bridge abutment in that corner, and also the channel lining that was there was damaged. So the cost to fix that, it had some damage on the south side as well, on the Indian Wells side of the bridge, is about $100,000. So I'm working with Indian Wells. We'll do some cost sharing.
Well, 80,000 was theirs, wasn't it?
Yeah. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Well, for some reason, no, it was the other way around. Unfortunately,
their side of the road, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to have to kick off granted on that and get that repair done. The good news is it's probably an insurable fix because of the city's insurance policy for bridges. So that's my update.
Good. Thanks, Tim. Any other department heads? Just a comment, Edie, museum function, Day of the Dead was
terrific.
Great. Good attendance. I think they did an excellent display. I think it was done very well.
Yeah, very, very well.
Mr. Mayor, are we going to get to hear from our
Good.
Assistant Police Chief?
Last week, I contacted our police chief in regards to some of the negativity that we've seen in the press, on TV and that, in regards to the Cove area, and we're getting people saying that it's not safe, and I want to diffuse this because that's not correct, and that, so I've asked Dave to come up and kind of bring us up to date, and maybe you know, we know it, but we want to make sure that our citizens know that, hey, it's a safe community. We've just had a couple of unfortunate incidents that have hit the press, and we want to make sure that people are not concerned, that they know we're doing whatever we can to make sure it's a safe community.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Council and citizens. We have had a very dramatic couple weeks, especially isolated to the Cove area of the city. What I can tell you is that the men and women of the La Quinta Police Department benefit from a very specific trust that our community gives us, in that you trust us to go out and find the facts and the minutia detail. And obviously we can't share all those details with our citizenry the way we would want to, because we have to worry about jury selection and things like that at a later date. But what I can tell you is that if you notice the response that the last 2 weekend incidents had garnered from your police department, the amount of resources, men and women, and officers that flooded the area, we found that those incidents were isolated or related unto themselves, meaning that it wasn't rampant and it wasn't something to where there was this need for us to worry that there was a stranger on the loose and going about attacking innocent, unrelated victims and creating new crime. Because of that, we continue to react to these things that occur that there's almost no way to premonition when they will occur. We can flood the area with eyes and ears, but what happens behind closed doors amongst family units and things like that are still going to be something we can't stop with eyes and ears. And that's kind of what we were experiencing these last couple weeks. It wasn't that there isn't some crime occurring, it's just that it's not the you can't go outside your home and you can't feel safe in your neighborhood because you can be attacked at any moment. We're not finding that to be the case with these incidents. What I can tell you also is that I went back 5 years and looked at some statistics isolated only to the Cove community. And what I learned is that we actually are experiencing a huge reduction in property crime. Burglaries are down dramatically this year over prior years. I'm also noticing that although our crimes against persons, which is the assaults and the robberies, are on par with the last 2 years, 13 and 12, they're not dramatically spiked. So we actually had more robberies that occurred in the Cove, let's say in 11, 12, than we did so far this year. So I understand that the worry of the citizens are that maybe there's this bad element that has moved in and has taken hold somehow. But the men and women of the police department are finding that we're reacting to the crimes that we can't predict and with what's going on with them. And then we are still bringing those quick resources, and we're apprehending these people. We don't have a backlog of cold cases in the police department for these crimes. If you commit a robbery in La Quinta, the highest percentage rate is that you're going to get arrested, you're going to be apprehended, and you're going to be convicted. So definitely our concern is to make sure our citizens feel safe, and we're worried that they don't. But what I can say is that we are doing some things that might lend itself to more, a feeling of more security. That might be the fact that we're doing the crime-free multi-housing, and we're really pushing hard to get all the property managers of all the multi-unit complexes and homes and La Quinta's low-income properties certified, so that the police and them can work so much closer together. And if a person commits this, essentially what amounts to a breach of their contract on a single issue, the eviction proceedings can take place, and we can move that element out. Our COP vehicle, our brand new COP vehicle, is being upfitted right now at Woodcrest Outfitters in Riverside. It's getting the light bar and the push bumper, and so we're looking really closely at having this infusion of more of our citizenry helping the police, calling us in and bringing us into areas that need it to reduce crime. And then of course we have our traffic officers. The traffic officers are working side by side with the SET team, and the SET team's an award-winning team. This is a team that is responsible for the quick reaction but proactivity. So they're quick to react to the crimes that occurred, but they're very proactive in conducting PRCS sweeps, which is the post-release community supervision persons that are out in our community. They go and check those people, and if they have warrants, they arrest them. And they go to their homes and they conduct probation searches twice a year on large scale. You see on large scale. So we're going to continue to do these things, but we don't want the citizens to believe that you can't go out and enjoy a dinner, or you can't go out and wash your car without being accosted. And that's really what we're concerned with.
Water District might not like that, but...
What's that?
They may not like us out there washing our car.
Right, of course.
Just with a bucket and a sponge.
Right. A dry wash, really. Yeah. Really, with an air hose, really. But I'm hoping that some of that I've explained to you is something that helps to allay and defer some of the fear that's maybe, although it seems like it should be forefront, it's really something we're very attentive to. And believe me, the chief of police and I have talked. If there was an issue where there was some stranger on stranger victimization and something we could be doing more with, we would have all those resources you saw on a weekend there regularly. I mean, you know what I mean? We'd flood the area. We wouldn't give up. We wouldn't be stopping our search. We'd constantly be on the lookout and the prowl. But what we're doing is we do have our regular routine patrols, and we do have these sweeps going on, and we do have all this other activity that seems to be holding it.
Do we do a correlation on, even if they're isolated incidents and with the SET teams, through the early release under AB 109, and are these individuals part of the early release program? Have we looked at that? Do we need to look at that?
Oh, we do.
I mean, it's something that we can take back above us to justify how much we dislike AB 109. I don't know. But I mean, it's just because of AB 109 this is occurring.
You know, I haven't studied that. I don't know if there's a direct correlation. I can tell you that it's something we can look at, of course, and bring back. But I can also say that, you know, obviously if we have people that are arrested and they're jailed or confined, and then we release them earlier than what their sentence would normally require of rehabilitation, if you will, then the potential for, you know, repeat offense and things like that are there. It's there. You know, it's certainly a stronger than normal possibility that they might reoffend because the sentence was so light, if you will, than what was intended. But no direct correlation and study has taken place at this time in La Quinta.
may be interested in that.
Okay.
Somewhere down the road.
Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Whoa, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I have a question.
Sure.
Several years ago, in one of the yearly reports that we got, there was a 100% increase in the murders in the city of La Quinta. And that was because there was one murder.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
And I'm hoping that we can put together some kind of a document that tells us what is going on and is honest and to the point, but that we don't call one murder 100% increase in the city of La Quinta.
Otherwise,
Right.
the stats look bad, right?
I mean, because right now, we're looking at a 300% increase in the city of La Quinta, or 200%. And that
It sends the wrong message.
yeah,
Right.
it just, and people are going online to look at stats like that to determine whether or not they want to look at this community to live in.
Right.
So whatever you have to do, try
Right.
to figure out a better way to do it than that.
I hear you loud and clear, Councilwoman, and I agree with you 100% that when the numbers we're talking about are so small, they're so myopic in across the board. If you focus on the percentage,
Yeah.
that looks bad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Thanks, Dave. And that, with that, we'll move on to mayor and council members' items. Anybody have anything?
I do. I do have two things. Could we introduce Biker Ted? New employee?
Biker Ted. Yes, in the back there in the gold shirt is Ted. He is the business analyst that is working now in the city manager's office. We had a position come open. He has a background in economic development and business analysis and a variety of other things, and is a very interesting man because he not only rides his motorcycle to and from work on long distances, he also hunts and cans and smokes meat and makes
Does
beer.
what? Smokes what? Meat. Oh, meat, okay.
And we're learning,
Before it's green or after it's green.
we're learning a lot of things about him.
Welcome.
Yes. well, yeah.
I ran into him this morning in the kitchen, and that, I just thought he came off the street and was looking for something to drink, a cup of coffee. But I didn't know who he was.
Now you know.
Now I know.
Okay, my second item has to do with Mr. Hammer.
Yes.
And he has that property, as we all know, at Monroe and Avenue 58. And he wanted to, well, let's see, it's zoned low-density residential, I believe. And he wanted to put some gas station and convenience store there, and we said no. But now he wants to farm it. And I just think that would be a good use for it. However, with the, well, I do.
No,
The
no,
goat
I
farm's
know,
right
I
across the
like- yeah,
street,
I know the story.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so in order to do this, he would have to take out a conditional use permit and an MUP if he wanted to have a little vegetable stand. So my question to council and for you too, Les, is it possible to rezone that so that he can farm it?
And my question,
Just a quick comment. I talked to Frank about that this morning, and I asked that he put that on the agenda so that we can deal with it to help Joe go ahead and be able to do something that had already been done prior, and that's farm it. But I think Frank said, yeah, we can go to that.
Okay.
And it'll be up to the council to make the decision as to whether we want to give him some financial help to be able to go back to what he was doing prior to
I don't know about
Well, we're not giving financial help, we're not writing him a check.
Certainly from a zoning standpoint.
So, but I do have a, yes, I do have a question. If we could, if we were to rezone this, I'm assuming, well, two things. I'm assuming then that he doesn't have to have the CUP or the MUP, right?
Well, I think the
So that he
question,
could farm it?
the question would be what he would want to rezone it to.
Well, what would we rezone it to, so someone could farm it?
agricultural.
Well, he was historically farming it many years ago, and then, of course, it's gone fallow for several years, and there's been development around it. And the reason why we have the conditional use permit requirement is really an issue of compatibility or incompatibility of that use with homes that are adjacent or in proximity. So it's the issue of trying to make sure that, because I know where I live, I have active ag farming occurring very close, within a half mile of my house, and they're out harvesting at midnight. Or tilling the dirt at 2 in the morning. I've actually seen it happening, wondering what's going on. And so obviously you want to minimize the impact upon those existing homes that are in proximity or adjacency. But the question may be, can we change the municipal code to make it maybe a simpler process for consideration for those uses? It could be an administrative review with the ability to establish some reasonable conditions through an administrative process versus a full-blown conditional use permit. That might better serve the situation versus rezoning Mr. Hammer's property, because I don't know if he's really clear as to what he wants to do with all of the property at this point.
I think we need to have Joe come back to us and say, this is what we want, and then what we can do to help him
give him some more flexibility.
Sure, you bet.
Okay, the only reason I really brought it up was to get consensus to have it agendized.
Well,
So if everybody's okay
that's what
with
I
that.
asked Frank to do.
Right.
Let's get it on the agenda and let's discuss it and see what we can do to help him.
Thank you very
Yeah, and I think, you know, he fought long and hard to get that commercial. He fought for that, and he better stop and think about where he wants to go with that land in the future. Plus, the issue that you just brought up, because there's more residential going in out there, and they're not going to want to farm right next to them. So either they don't want to have a gas station and a store, or they don't want to farm.
If they buy a home out in the rural area, near the county, across the street, and someone's going to farm across the street, surprise, surprise.
I know, but right now he's zoned commercial, and people might buy on
He's
it.
not zoned commercial, is he?
It's
Yeah,
residential.
it's low
Well, he
density
wants to go back to farming the way it was before because he couldn't get the approval on the commercial.
Right, I know that. I know that.
So,
And again, we're going to agendize it, but I think the question may be more of looking at the issue of conditional use. Maybe there's another option. I would hate to say it's outright permitted, only because I'd like to see if there's a way we can put some realistic parameters on that type of activity, but not go through a full-blown conditional use permit process.
let's do whatever we can do to help the situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, at this time, Okay, get the paper out of the way. I'll call to order the special meeting of the successor agency to the La Quinta Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, October 21, 2014. Please let me know that all agency members are present. We have no closed session. Public comment, anybody wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, then we'll move on to confirmation of agenda. Any changes by staff?
No.
By agency members?
No.
Okay. Move on to the consent calendar.
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Department reports, there is a request on here, oversight board report, verbal, anybody?
There is nothing to report. They haven't met for a while.
Okay, all right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second, please vote.
Whichever one we need.
Motion passes unanimously.
And with that, I will call that the Housing Authority meeting for Tuesday, October 21st, 2014 to order. And could we will note for the record that all agency or board members are present. No closed session. A verbal announcement, AB 23. Excuse me.
Board members of the La Quinta Housing Authority are entitled to receive a $50 stipend as set by Section 34274 of the Health and Safety Code, not to exceed 4 meetings per month, to be paid to members in attendance at every convened Housing Authority meeting.
Thank you. That's something that I don't take anyway. Closed session, there is none. Public comment, anybody out there wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none, I will move on to confirmation of agenda. Any changes by staff or members? No. Announcement, presentations, written communications, none. Consent calendar.
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Please vote. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And study session, none. Information, none. Department, none. Chair, none. Public comment. Again, I have nothing, no request to speak. Public hearing, none. And with that, we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Please vote. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Wonder why we got a, oh, I know why.
Me too, thank you.